Senator Duckworth, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to both General Van Ovost and General Wolters for joining us today. As we near the milestone of 1 month into the invasion of Ukraine, we are hitting a critical moment in our pledge to support Ukraine and our NATO allies. What were once seen as ad hoc efforts to gather and distribute aid to the Ukrainian heroes combating Russian aggression will now become, or has become, a new normal. What was once an emergent situation will now test our commitment and our resilience as the fatigue of warfare sets in. This new reality will stress our own logistics networks as we have to reinforce our delivery mechanisms into Ukraine in order to deter Russian interdiction. And it will challenge our industry partners to reopen or accelerate manufacturing lines to incorporate into the next aid package and to replenish our own stockpiles. So I'd like to start off by discussing the status of our inter-theater capabilities, which are critical to the work that we're doing in Europe and will be just as critical, if ever needed, for a contingency in the Pacific. During our last meeting, General Van Ovost, we discussed your plans to reduce the age of your strategic maritime assets by purchasing used replacement ships. This strategy is clearly proving successful, but with 34 of your 50 assets set to retire, I am concerned that we're not moving fast enough. General Van Ovost, what are the biggest obstacles you face in your strategy to buy used maritime assets, and what can Congress do to support your efforts during fiscal year 2023?
Thank you, Senator. And as we discussed, the aging ships are costing more to maintain, and even with that more money, we're not getting the readiness bang out of that buck. So we have had to make some prudent and cost-effective decisions to accelerate retirements of platforms, even without a backfill. I think most importantly, a stable plan of recapitalization with used ships to ensure that we get the most value out of it, and also to stabilize the shipyards, because these ships do go back and get modifications done as they come into the ready reserve fleet. So a nice stable platform for buy, about 4 a year, would be very helpful to close and be able to mitigate those gaps. But I also want to just reiterate that, you know, our organic fleet will never be able to do everything we need to do. So maintaining a healthy ready reserve fleet is good, but I also want to thank this committee for their work, not only on the continued stipend for the MSP, but also for the tanker security program that we just started to provide U.S. crewed, U.S. flagged ships for both fuel movement and for our regular maritime security program. These are force multipliers for us to ensure that we can continue to project and sustain the force into the future.
Thank you. On my second question, I want to turn back to logistics, but it's in Europe. I'd like to touch on issues of lessons learned and potential obstacles for the future. And I know we've already had a bit of a discussion on the EDI with my colleague from Oklahoma, Senator Inhofe. Given that we're nearly 4 weeks into this conflict in Ukraine and a month and a half into our increased presence and posture, we must take the opportunity to evaluate this strategy and look forward to what logistic challenges may be in our future. So, General Wolters, I'd like to give you the opportunity to sort of discuss what lessons related to logistics should we be learning from U.S. operations in Europe, and what steps should we be taking during this fiscal year's budget cycle to plan for the enduring logistics challenge of a prolonged war in Ukraine, as well as the recovery that will come after that?
Senators, you will know from your history that this takes constant scrutiny, constant iterations, constant willingness to listen and process and prove. And we, during the start of this campaign in the vicinity of 27 February, stood up 2 logistics cells that actually iterate on all these processes. One is UCOM represented, the other one is internationally represented. And at the end of the day, you've got to get the right stuff in at the right time, and it has to be appropriately defended so that those individuals that are responsible for putting in are protected. And when it goes into the actionable area, Ukraine, it's put to good use, and then you have to track it every second along the way. And we have that data, are maintaining that data, and we continue to iterate, to process and prove all the way from acquiring it in CONUS to where it gets to the operator in Ukraine, to make sure that we're doing the right thing from a logistics standpoint. And that's actually what those two cells are charged to do, as well as current day ops. And at the end of the day, it takes gigantic elbow grease every millisecond of the day to get right, and you have to wake up the next morning and tell yourself you're not probably doing it right, and be prepared to iterate one more time. And that's what those two cells are currently in the process of doing at Stuttgart.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.